They said I was just a waiter, but then I bought the restaurant and fired them during their anniversary dinner. People think your life changes in a single moment, some dramatic twist of fate that turns the world upside down. For me, it wasn't just a moment. It was a slow burn, a quiet, cruel unraveling that started with a fire and ended with a lie. When I was 16, my world burned to the ground. We lived in a small town in Ohio. Not the kind you see in movies with perfect fences and cheerful bakeries. No, this was real small town life. Tough winters, hard work, and dreams that barely survived past high school. But my parents? They were different. They believed in things. In people. In me. They owned a little diner called Mason's Table. Yeah, they named it after me. Said I was the reason they started it. I grew up in that place, napping in booths while Dad flipped pancakes and Mom refilled coffee cups for truckers and teachers. It wasn't fancy, but it was ours. And it was full of laughter, warmth, and the smell of fresh cinnamon rolls. Business was decent. My dad had big plans. He wanted to expand, buy the empty lot next door, add a real kitchen, maybe even open a second location someday. He talked about it every night at the dinner table with that same glint in his eye, the one that made you believe anything was possible. But expansion costs money. And so, he turned to his oldest friend, Jack Hart. Jack had moved out of town years earlier, made it big in real estate. When he came back to visit, it was always flashy, new car, designer suit, fancy sunglasses even on cloudy days. But my dad? He saw him as family, trusted him like a brother. So when Jack offered to help with the investment in exchange for a silent partnership, my dad said yes. No contracts, just a handshake. That's how deep the trust went. And then came the fire. It happened on a Friday night in October. I remember because it was the school dance, and for once, I was going. I had a stupid rented tux and sweaty palms, and Mom let me borrow the car. She waved from the porch, even joked, "Don't fall in love too fast." By 10 p.m., the fire department was calling my name through smoke and rubble. An electrical fire, they said. Faulty wiring in the back pantry. My dad had gone back inside. Said he forgot the family photo album. He never came back out. Mom barely made it. She spent months in the hospital, burned, broken, shattered. The insurance company? They dragged their feet, called it questionable negligence, said they were looking into fraud. We lost everything. And Jack Hart? He vanished. No calls. No help. No explanation. We didn't even know he had pulled his investment 2 weeks earlier until the bank showed us the paperwork. Turns out Jack knew about the faulty wiring. He had it checked before backing out. Never told my dad. Never warned him. He let us burn. I dropped out of school. Took 3 jobs. Moved with Mom to a tiny apartment in the city where the ceiling leaked and the neighbors yelled at each other through paper-thin walls. She needed care. Medicine. Physical therapy. So I did what I had to. One of those jobs was bussing tables at Le Meridian. It was the kind of place you'd see in magazines, tall windows, golden chandeliers, menus without prices. I didn't belong there. But I wore the uniform, kept my head down, and worked like a machine. No breaks. No complaints. I started as a busboy. Quiet, invisible. Then waiter. Still invisible, but now expected to smile while people looked through me. People like Jack Hart. 3 years in, he walked through the door, laughing, loud, holding hands with a woman who looked like she'd stepped off a runway. Emily. She was beautiful in that ruthless way, flawless skin, perfect posture, but cold. Like she hadn't smiled without malice in years. They were celebrating their 5th anniversary. I still remember what she wore. A white satin dress and diamond earrings that caught the chandelier light like daggers. She looked right through me when I poured her wine. Jack didn't even recognize me. I stared at him, heart pounding, waiting for a flicker, a pause, a flinch, anything. But there was nothing. And then, halfway through the meal, he said to her, loudly, like he wanted the whole room to hear, "This is the problem with America. Everyone wants to be the boss. But you know what? Some people are just meant to serve." Waiters, janitors, whatever. They need to stop pretending they're special. She laughed. That cold, high laugh. And for a second, I wanted to throw the wine in his face. Scream. Grab him by the collar and ask, "Do you remember what you did to my father?" But I didn't. I smiled, nodded, and walked away. That night, I went home, shut the door, and stared at myself in the mirror. I was 21, broke, burned by the world, and worst of all, invisible. And yet, something sparked in me. Revenge is strange. It doesn't come as fire. It comes as ice. Slow, calculated, patient. That night, I made a decision. I wouldn't just survive. I would watch them fall. But not by shouting, not by begging. I'd take everything they loved, one careful piece at a time. The next time Jack and Emily Hart walked into a Meridian, they were listed under the name VIP priority guests. I was now one of the senior waiters, not because anyone promoted me out of admiration, but because everyone else kept quitting. This restaurant chewed through staff like meat, and I was the only one stubborn enough to stay. Every time they came in, and they loved to come in, I was assigned to their table. Like fate couldn't resist twisting the knife. Emily always ordered without looking at the menu. Jack would give me his order like it was an insult. "You can remember that, can't you?" he'd say. "Or do I need to write it down for you?" They never recognized me. That's how little they noticed me, even though I had once called him Uncle Jack. But their presence wasn't just painful, it was strategic. The more they came, the more I learned. Where they lived, what cars they drove, who their friends were, and more importantly, what they feared. Jack was terrified of being irrelevant. He constantly bragged about how he still ran this city, how he had connections in every zip code. And Emily, her power was social. She was obsessed with image. She ran a lifestyle brand online, all fake smiles and luxury breakfasts on white marble counters. Behind the scenes, though, their lives were messier than they let on. Through quiet listening, I learned that Jack's firm was under pressure. New developers were undercutting him. He was stretched thin, trying to keep his name at the top of an industry that no longer needed him. And Emily? She was in the middle of a quiet lawsuit, another influencer accusing her of stealing content and branding. It was being kept under wraps, but it was enough to make her desperate for more. More followers, more press, more exclusivity. Which is how I found out their dream was to own a restaurant. Not just any restaurant, Le Meridian. It was perfect in their eyes. Status, elegance, a regular hangout spot that they could slap their names on. Emily talked about turning it into an experiential dining brand with her face on the ads. Jack said it would be their legacy. They didn't know the restaurant was struggling. The truth was, the owner, old Mr. Farnsworth, was nearly bankrupt. Rising costs, declining sales, and poor management had drained the once glamorous restaurant to the edge of collapse. And here's where the betrayal took its sharpest turn. One night, after a particularly humiliating dinner with the Harts, Emily had spilled red wine on the white tablecloth and snapped her fingers at me to clean it like I was a roach. Farnsworth called me into his office. He looked exhausted. A once proud man slumped behind a desk stacked with overdue bills. "Mason," he sighed. "You've been here a long time." I nodded. "You're the only one who gives a damn about this place. Everyone else is just here for tips or status. But you're different." He leaned forward. "I'm selling." My stomach dropped. "To whom?" He hesitated. "Jack Hart." The name felt like acid. I kept my expression still. "You're selling to Jack Hart?" He nodded. "He made an offer. Said he wants to revamp the place. He'll pay off the debts. I don't have a choice." I wanted to scream. This man, the one who had let my father die, the one who mocked me for years, was about to own the last thing I had left. But instead of screaming, I asked, "Do you have to sell to him?" Farnsworth blinked. "What?" "Give me 3 months," I said. "Let me make you a counteroffer. One that lets you leave with dignity." He laughed. "You're a waiter. I'm also someone with nothing to lose." He gave me that look people give when they've already buried your chances. But to his credit, he said, 3 months. If you can pull off a miracle, it's yours. That night, I made the riskiest decision of my life. I took everything I had saved in 10 years, every tip, every side hustle, every cent, and poured it into building an LLC. I got a lawyer. I researched silent investors, old school friends, even ex-coworkers who'd moved into tech and finance. I pitched the idea of a full-circle revenge story disguised as a business proposition. It sounds crazy, I know, but people love an underdog. And more than that, they love taking down the elite. I told them the truth. I told them about Jack, about the fire, about what I wanted to build, not just a restaurant, but a symbol. A place run by the overlooked. Chefs who'd been denied. Servers with dreams. Hosts who had ideas that had been ignored by snobs in suits. Some laughed, but some didn't. By the end of month 2, I had enough capital to make a counteroffer. A bold one. One that Jack would never expect. And then I found out the most important piece of the puzzle. Jack's offer wasn't official yet. He hadn't signed the contract. He was waiting until his and Emily's 10th wedding anniversary, where he planned to announce it publicly with a press dinner at Le Méridien. That meant I had a window. A short, narrow, perfect window. Just 2 days before the anniversary dinner, Farnsworth called me. "I've accepted your offer." I almost collapsed. Jack didn't know yet. His team hadn't been informed. The signatures were still warm on the paper when I walked into the restaurant as the new owner, not a waiter, not a nobody. But the best part? The press dinner was still on the schedule. Jack and Emily thought they were the future owners. They were coming, camera ready, arrogant, entitled, to celebrate what they believed they had taken. And I planned to let them walk in like kings, only to show them the crown was already mine. I didn't sleep the night before their anniversary dinner. I sat in the back office of Le Méridien, now my office, staring at the official papers of ownership, feeling a strange mix of fury, relief, and cold purpose. I had dreamed of this moment for years, imagined it in 1,000 different ways. But now that it was real, the weight of it pressed against my chest. The boy who had watched his father burn, who had scrubbed dishes for tips, who had smiled through humiliation, was finally about to stand on the other side of the table. Not as a servant, but as the man who owned the building. Still, I knew I had to play this perfectly. Revenge isn't just about rage. It's about timing, about control, about knowing when to twist the knife, and when to let them twist it themselves. The plan was simple, but cruel. Let them believe they'd won. Let them walk in, toast, celebrate, brag. Let the press take photos. Let the staff treat them like royalty, and then, in front of everyone, pull the rug out. But it had to be flawless. I gathered the staff early that morning. Some of them knew me as a waiter. Others had joined recently and only knew me as that quiet guy. Now, I stood in front of them with the documents in my hand. "I'm Mason Lane," I said, voice even, heart pounding. "As of this morning, I'm the sole owner of Le Méridien." Silence. Then whispers. Then one of the line cooks, Jorge, who'd worked there even longer than me, broke into a grin. "Waiter Mason? You're the boss now?" I nodded. Another waitress clapped. The dishwasher blinked and muttered, "No freaking way." And just like that, the tide turned. I wasn't invisible anymore. I was in control. I addressed them all. "We have one priority today," I said. "The Heart anniversary dinner. It goes exactly as planned. No slip-ups, no attitude, no clues. You treat them like gods. Smile. Serve. Let them think they own the place." They stared at me. Then I added, "Because at 8:45 p.m., during dessert, I'll make an announcement. And when I do, I want every one of you to witness it." There were smirks, nods, excitement brewing beneath the surface like static. Revenge wasn't just mine now. It belonged to every person in that room who had ever been belittled by someone like Jack Hart. By 6 p.m., the restaurant gleamed like a jewel. Fresh orchids on every table. Glasses polished until they shone. The entire staff dressed in crisp new uniforms I had ordered in secret weeks earlier, waiting for this day. At 6:45, they arrived. Jack in a navy silk blazer, Emily in a gold cocktail dress that caught every camera flash. A trail of photographers followed them in like moths to wealth. I stood near the bar, dressed in a fitted black suit, clipboard in hand, blending in with the shadows, watching. Table 7, the host said. Right in the center. Exactly as planned. As they walked in, I saw the glances from staff, the tight smiles, the shared tension. Emily strutted in like she was already queen of the room. "This place is ours," she whispered to Jack. "You can feel it." He smirked. "Let's make the announcement before dessert. I want the press to get the story first." They sat, ordered their favorites. Bottles of wine. Imported oysters. "Bring out the signature duck," Emily said, flashing a cruel grin. "It'll be our legacy dish." I watched every course go out smoothly. I stood at the pass, arms crossed, heart thumping. Jack raised his glass between bites. "To the future owners of Le Meridian," he said loudly. Everyone clapped. I didn't. I stepped into the private room just off the dining floor and waited for the signal. 8:40. The pastry chef, Anna, sent out the dessert. Chocolate souffle with spun sugar, served under a silver dome. 8:44. The lights dimmed, exactly as I'd asked. And at 8:45, I stepped out. The room quieted. Dozens of guests stared. The staff lined the perimeter. Journalists raised their phones, waiting for a speech. Jack stood up, beaming. He held his glass high and said, "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us tonight. Emily and I have an announcement." "Actually," I interrupted, stepping into the spotlight, "I have one." The room fell silent. Jack froze. Emily turned slowly, her expression shifting from smugness to confusion to fear. "My name is Mason Lane," I said, "and as of this morning, I am the sole owner of Le Meridian." You could hear a pin drop. Jack's jaw tensed. "What the hell are you talking about?" I smiled. "You were planning to buy this place, weren't you? Planning to announce it tonight?" He took a step forward. "This is a joke." I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out the signed contract. "Not at all. Mr. Farnsworth accepted my offer 3 days ago. Here's the paperwork. Filed. Legal. Official." Emily stood now, eyes wide. "You're the waiter." "I was," I said. Laughter rippled through the staff. One of the bartenders chuckled, unable to hide it. I stepped closer, dropping my voice just enough for the front row to hear. "You remember the fire, Jack? My family's diner. My father. You were his partner. You knew the wiring was faulty. You pulled your money days before it happened." His eyes darkened. "I trusted you," I continued. "And you let him die. You left us with nothing. So I started over. I built my way up. I served drinks, cleaned floors, and I waited." Emily grabbed Jack's arm. "Let's go." But I wasn't finished. "You're not going anywhere just yet." I turned to the staff. "Effective immediately, Mr. Jack Hart and Mrs. Emily Hart are banned for life from this restaurant. They are no longer VIP guests. They are not affiliated with this business in any way. In fact," I stepped back and gestured grandly, "you're both trespassing." Security stepped forward, 2 men in suits I'd hired just for tonight. Jack's face went red. "You can't do this." I just did. And with that, they were escorted out. In front of their friends. In front of the press. In front of every server, cook, and busboy they had ever sneered at. Cameras clicked. Flashes exploded. Emily screamed at one of the reporters, trying to cover her face. Jack shoved a wine glass off a table on the way out, shattering it to the floor. The room erupted. Laughter. Cheers. Applause. Staff clapped. Some cried. Jorge hugged me like I was his long-lost brother. The bartender poured champagne for everyone on the house. That night, I didn't just reclaim my dignity. I erased theirs. You'd think it would end there, Jack and Emily being humiliated in front of a full dining room, their power shattered, their pride bleeding on the marble floor. But no. That night was only the beginning. Because I hadn't just come to fire them. I came to destroy them, methodically, quietly, with the kind of precision they would never expect from just a waiter. The media coverage from that night exploded. It was the perfect storm. Wealthy elites publicly exposed, a revenge story decades in the making, and a once invisible man rising like a phoenix. Within 24 hours, 3 articles had gone viral. Waiter buys restaurant, bans entitled millionaire couple on their anniversary. From fire to fortune, the Mason Lane story. Exposing the hearts. How a real estate mogul abandoned a dying business partner. Jack tried to spin the story, claimed I was unstable, that I forged documents, that I had stolen the restaurant out from under him. But the truth had receipts. And more importantly, people. Other former employees, from Jack's real estate firm, Emily's influencer brand, even old neighbors, started speaking up. He never paid us on time. She threatened to sue over negative comments. They bullied everyone who couldn't benefit them. It turned into a wave, quiet whispers turning into shouts. The perfect social media avalanche. Meanwhile, I kept working. Not just at the restaurant, I had other plans. See, while Jack had been chasing luxury deals and schmoozing with billionaires, I'd been paying attention. Watching. Studying. I knew the buildings he owned, the vendors he used, the backroom deals he thought were hidden. And now? I had connections of my own. Step 1. His real estate empire. Jack's development firm, Heart and Gold, was struggling even before the restaurant debacle. High interest rates. Competition. A few shady land purchases. All I had to do was light the match. I gathered every document I could, public records, tax data, emails from whistleblowers, and one particularly damning invoice that showed he had illegally bypassed safety inspections on a senior housing project. I passed it to an old customer of mine, now an investigative journalist for the Herald Post. The headline ran, "Beneath the Surface, Jack Hart's Unsafe Properties and Forgotten Promises." The city opened an inquiry within days. One of Jack's biggest investors, a hedge fund out of New York, pulled out. Contracts were frozen. Tenants protested. 2 lawsuits were filed. Within 3 weeks, Jack's firm dropped from the top 50 developers list to bankruptcy rumors. His name, once a symbol of prestige, became a cautionary tale. Step 2. Emily's luxury brand. Emily's empire was built on aesthetics, the illusion of perfection. But that made her vulnerable. Because underneath the filters and sponsorships, her brand was rotten. Remember that pending lawsuit I heard about? I contacted the other influencer, a woman named Rachel whom Emily had bullied off a joint campaign and publicly smeared. I sent her the restaurant clip. Sent her the viral stories. Told her it was safe to speak up now. And she did. And then others followed. A video compilation went viral. The real Emily Hart, 10 times she lied, exploited, and stole. Footage of her being rude to assistants, copying products, faking collaborations. Her sponsor contracts started vanishing overnight. By the end of the month, Instagram had flagged her account for misleading content. YouTube removed 3 of her videos for violating guidelines. TikTok? Cancelled. Her brand collapsed in days. Step 3. The final blow. One morning, about 2 months after the anniversary dinner, I received a letter. Official. Stamped. Sealed. It was from my father's old attorney, someone I hadn't spoken to since I was a teen. The letter said, "I've read what happened. I have something that may interest you. Come by my office." I went. Sat in the same leather chair where my father once sat, talking about building dreams with a man he trusted. The lawyer handed me a folder. Inside were copies of the original partnership agreement between my father and Jack Hart. But not just any agreement. This one had handwritten notes and a clause Jack had conveniently left out when he pulled his money. In the event of liquidation or dissolution of Mason's table, remaining shares are to be distributed to the next of kin after all debts are settled. Translation? When Jack pulled his investment before the fire, he should have paid a severance to my family. But he didn't. He took the money, ignored the contract, and let us go bankrupt. It wasn't just immoral. It was illegal. I had what I needed. I hired a legal team. Quiet, deadly, and thorough. We sued Jack for breach of contract, intentional withholding of funds, and reckless endangerment tied to the faulty wiring. Emily was named as a co-conspirator. They tried to fight it, claimed memory loss, denied the documents. blamed my dad. But the paper trail was airtight. The judge ruled in our favor. Jack Hart owed $3.2 million in damages to the Lane family estate. And here's the cruelest part. He had already liquidated assets to cover his other lawsuits. That meant he had to sell his mansion just to pay the judgment. The same mansion where Emily once threw lavish influencer parties with champagne towers and live violinists in the driveway. Sold. To foreclosure. They moved into a rental home outside the city. No doorman. No marble stairs. No assistants. Just two people sitting on a couch, scrolling through a timeline full of memes about their own downfall. And me? I rebuilt Mason's table. I bought the empty lot next door and opened a second restaurant, this one named Lane's Fire, a tribute to everything we lost and everything we fought back from. Every week, I host community nights. Low-cost meals for working families, profit shares for staff, internships for local high schoolers who want to learn culinary arts. People ask me if I ever miss being a waiter. I don't, but I never forget it. Because it's what taught me the quiet power of being underestimated. It taught me how to listen while they laughed, how to wait while they won, and how to strike when they least expected it. 6 months passed. Jack and Emily Hart were no longer the glamorous power couple they once portrayed. Their names had vanished from the front pages. Their faces faded from search results. They had become what they once mocked: quiet, forgotten, ordinary. And I was thriving. Mason's table had not only reopened, it had exploded in popularity. Lane's Fire was booked 3 weeks out. Investors who had once ignored my emails now begged for partnerships. Staff who had spent years hiding in shadows now had equity, healthcare, and respect. I had become a quiet force in the city. But I hadn't done it to be famous. I had done it for one reason: to bring peace to my mother. She had suffered in silence for so long. In a wheelchair, half blind from the smoke, but stronger than anyone I'd ever known. I bought her a house with a garden she could wheel through every morning. Hired nurses, therapists, gave her the one thing life had stolen: dignity. One Sunday morning, while I was serving her coffee in the sunroom, she looked at me with tears in her eyes and whispered, "Your father would be proud." That was the first time in 20 years I cried in front of anyone. I thought the story had ended there. A clean arc. Injustice, pain, revenge, peace. But the past has teeth. And sometimes, just when you believe you've laid it to rest, it bites. It started with a phone call. A number I didn't recognize. No name. No ID. Hello? A pause. Then a woman's voice. Calm. Precise. Is this Mason Lane? Yes. My name is Catherine Monroe. I'm an archivist with the Ohio Small Business Bureau. We're currently digitizing old case files and license records. We came across something you may want to see. I frowned. From the diner? Yes. From Mason's table, 2003. Pre-fire. My stomach tightened. What is it? There's a sealed file your father had marked private eyes only. We opened it due to a statute expiration. Would you like it emailed? I said yes. 5 minutes later, a single PDF appeared in my inbox. It was short. 5 pages. Typed. Dated. Signed by my father. But it wasn't what I expected. It wasn't a letter. It was a will. A handwritten supplement to the official one we had already executed after his death. This one was never filed with the family attorney. It was hidden. And what it said made the ground drop out beneath me. In the event of my death, I hereby request that my share of Mason's table, as well as any future earnings tied to the brand or its intellectual property, be transferred to my son and his half-brother. My throat went dry. Half-brother? There was no half-brother. I kept reading. The second name was blacked out. Only the first initial remained. J. And below it, one chilling line. He doesn't know. Please protect him. I made a mistake. But no child deserves to pay for the sins of their parents. I stared at the screen. The timing. The phrasing. The initial. J. Jack? It couldn't be. Could it? I pulled up old photos. My father and Jack, teenagers, standing side by side in front of the original diner. Friends. Closer than brothers. I remembered a story my mom told me once, something I never paid attention to. We raised you both like our own. Some bonds don't need blood. I never questioned it. But now, I couldn't ignore what was in front of me. Jack Hart might not have just betrayed my father. He might have been his son. My father's illegitimate child. Which meant Jack was my brother. For 2 days, I didn't sleep. I paced the floors of my apartment, went through old boxes, looked for confirmation, letters, photos, receipts. And then I found it. Tucked inside a photo album, an old envelope, yellowed by time, labeled, J, if Mason ever finds out. Inside was a letter, never sent. Written by my father. Jack, I don't expect you to forgive me. I should have told you. Years ago. But your mother didn't want you to know. She made me promise. And I kept that promise until it was too late to make it right. I watched you grow from afar. I helped when I could. The diner investment? That was my way of trying to fix what I couldn't say. But I failed. And when you pulled out before the fire, I knew it wasn't just betrayal. It was fear. Fear of connection. Of obligation. I'm sorry, son. If Mason finds this letter, tell him the truth. Let him choose what to do with it. You're brothers, even if the world never knew it. My hands shook. Everything inside me rebelled against it. No. Jack wasn't my brother. He was the villain. The coward. The man who let my father die. The man who spat in my face for years. But suddenly, everything looked different. Was that why he had pulled his investment before the fire? Out of greed or guilt? Was he protecting himself from legal liability or trying to erase a past he couldn't bear? Was his cruelty a mask for shame? Or had he truly become the man he was always meant to be? I didn't know. And I didn't want to. But the question wouldn't die. And eventually, I made a decision. I sent the letter to Jack. No note. No explanation. Just the letter. A week passed. Then one day, a plain envelope arrived at Mason's table. No return address. Inside was a photo. 2 boys, one in a white apron, the other in a baseball cap, sitting on the hood of a car. My father standing behind them, hands on their shoulders. It was me and Jack. We couldn't have been more than 5 and 6. On the back of the photo, one sentence was written in tight black ink. I didn't know how to be a brother. I only knew how to win. I'm sorry. No name. No apology for the fire. No money. Just that. A whisper of truth. A man who had lost everything, including the only family he never knew he had. I never replied. I never called. I didn't forgive him. But I didn't destroy him further, either. Because the truth is, revenge is only satisfying until it meets reality. Then it becomes something else. Something colder. Something quieter. A scar. And I wear mine proudly. Not because I got even, but because I survived. And because in a world that called me just a waiter, I became the man who walked into the fire and came out carrying the match.